Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. Whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar Greaves Insurance are the people you need to talk to. So go to briargreavesinsurance.com today or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. On today's show, we are going to talk about the fact that the Bucs have their entire offense coming back intact for the 2025 season. All of the starters, some key backups as well. Also, happy NFL New Year to those who are paying attention to free agency today. The Bucs can officially sign new free agents. We'll also talk about the press conference had by Ben Bredeson earlier on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at PewterReport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. And Scott, I know it's a new offensive coordinator with Josh Grizzard, but since he was here last season, I'm only expecting big and better things from the Bucs offense now that everybody is back.
Yeah, we had a chance to speak to Ben Bredeson today, and his re-signing and Chris Godwin's re-signing just, it brings the entire offense back together. This is not going to be a thing where they're automatically going to pick up where they left off. There will be a little bit of a learning curve with Josh Grizzard, but the continuity with the coaching staff, with Baker Mayfield, the offensive line, the running back room, the receivers, the tight ends, there's going to be a few additions too. But by and large, every single starter from last year is back. And that allows this team, once they kind of build back up their chemistry and the foundation in the offseason and in training camp, it allows them to go further. And we're going to see some new wrinkles with this offense too. We're going to see a little bit more of a vertical passing game. And I think the Buccaneers are going to add a receiver or two that will be able to help stretch the field a little bit more. And I'm not sure Trey Palmer's going to have a fight on his hands to stay on this team. Really underwhelmed last year. But this should be a very fun offense to watch again. Obviously, the objective is 30 points per game or more. That seemed to work out pretty well for this team last year. When healthy with their wide receivers. And remember, they took Kansas City to the wire and to overtime at Arrowhead on Monday Night Football without Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, or even Jalen McMillan. Probably should have gone for two. Lessons learned, but you have to like the firepower that this team has at Baker Mayfield's disposal in the passing game. And we saw some growth at the end of last year from guys like Payne Durham and Devin Culp, and the emergence of Bucky Irving as that starting running back. And I think maybe right now the biggest question is on the offensive side is, which receiver are they going to add? That is an area that Todd Bowles talked about wanting to add, and that might come in the draft. They might find a free agent to kind of essentially replace Sterling Shepard. But then I think the other thing too is who is going to be the backup quarterback? Is it going to be Kyle Trask? Is he going to return for a fifth season, or is it going to be Michael Pratt? And then a new quarterback, whether it's a veteran or it is going to be another rookie.
Right, because this offense is bringing everybody back, any new addition is either going to be one of two things. It's either going to be an extra weapon or an extra piece for this team, a la a wide receiver, and we can talk a little bit more about that with whether it's in the draft or who's available. But the other side of it is that any new addition is just going to be for depth reasons. You need a backup quarterback behind Baker Mayfield just in case.
Yeah.
Is Kyle Trask going to return? Well, anybody else that would have had ties to Kyle Trask, they have already kind of filled their backup quarterback situation, whether it's the Jaguars, John Spytek saw Kyle Trask with the Raiders.
Yeah.
I know you tweeted today talking about Gardner Minshew potentially being not that the Bucs have their eye on him, but wanting Gardner Minshew to be the backup so we can get some comical clips and everything like that between Baker and Gardner Minshew. That would be a lot of fun.
Hey, when you're working out the creed, sporting that mullet, come to Tampa. We are your people. Let's do this. So.
in an odd way, we love the starting quarterbacks in Tampa, whether
Yeah,
it was Tom Brady or now Baker Mayfield. But we have a soft spot as well for the backup
we
quarterback.
do.
Blaine Gabbert is a hero. He literally
Yes.
lives when there was a helicopter crash here in the Tampa area. So, yeah, I mean, that would be a fun little storyline on the back end. But nonetheless, if anybody else fights their way into the starting lineup, that just means that they had an incredible training camp, whether it's along the offensive line, maybe it's some of the tight ends. No one's going to really surpass Kate Otten, but just getting more
Yeah.
playing time with, Devin Culp, I'm very intrigued by. And wide receiver, I do think if they go in free agency, it's going to be that veteran route, kind of like what they did with Shepard last year. But
Yep.
it does intrigue me if they decide to go with the wide receiver. Probably not at this point in the first round, just based on how they've really addressed the team so far, both on offense and defense. But, Tez Johnson is a name we've talked about. Somebody else had it in the comments too. So had my thoughts and my eyes on that too. Man, like getting an exciting piece that doesn't necessarily have to be a contributor right away, but can develop and maybe be a big time player the next season or whatever the case may be. It's starting to feel like how it did in 2020 after they won the Super Bowl. Remember that draft the next season? They went JTS in round 1, but Kyle Trask in round 2 was a luxury pick because the Bucs had a lot of spots already covered on offense, so they thought they had the quarterback of the future. We all know how the history went. But it'll be exciting to see what they do on offense because it's already great. Just how much better can it get?
Yeah, and this team wishes they had a better feel for Kyle Trask. I mean, obviously, you want your starters healthy, and that was the case for the first 2 years with Tom Brady and Kyle Trask on the team at the same time from 2021 and 2022. He was Brady was healthy, never missed a start, even in 2020 before Trask got to Tampa Bay. And so just kind of a little bit of unfortunate luck for Trask. Of course, the team is glad that Brady started every game, and then Baker Mayfield, the same thing over the last 2 years. So to me, when you look at Kyle Trask, I'm not opposed to him coming back. He does know the system. He has the, I think the ability to be a game manager in this scheme. And the thing with Trask is, he's drafted by this team. I thought he had his best preseason by far, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, right? And, there are worse backups out there. And the other thing too is he's not going to cost you a fortune. You look at some of these backups around the league. I mean, some of these backups are $10 million or more. Yeah. And that's just a little rich, especially for a guy like Baker Mayfield that has a proven track record, knock on wood, for not missing any action and being tough as nails. So, the thing with Baker is he's been dinged up, but he always shows up on Sunday, right? He hasn't had that big catastrophic injury like a broken leg or, something of that nature, torn ligaments that's going to sideline him for, a period of time. And so, I'm all in favor of having a cheaper backup quarterback just because of the durability that Baker Mayfield has shown.
Right. That's the one kind of moving part with Baker is that, yes, he has been healthy, but we all know the style that he plays. Like there have been times where I'm like, oh my God, Baker's not going to get up.
Yeah.
And then he does, and he's able to keep going and keep playing. But we've seen him play through injuries where it's like, I kind of wish maybe that he didn't sit out the whole game, but I wish maybe he took, 1 rep off or 1 series off to kind of collect his bearings a little bit. And Kyle Trask is so interesting because he's been here for a while now.
Yeah.
And I still don't know what to make of him.
I know.
Kyle Trask is an enigma when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at the same time, I would venture to say, and there's certainly moving parts right now because we're in the middle of free agency.
Yep.
But Kyle Trask, in my opinion, is probably in the top half of backup quarterbacks in this league. And I'm talking backup quarterbacks, not, quarterback controversy, who's going to win the job. I think he's right around 15 or 16. I'd have to go team by team. But for the price that you can get Kyle Trask at, being very, very low, besides some other teams out there that, as you said, are throwing much more money at backup quarterbacks, and maybe it's because their quarterback is a little more injury prone than, say, Baker has been over the last 2 seasons. But I don't mind having a quarterback returning to a team that has been in this offense, has worked with these players for quite a while now. And let's face it, with the majority of the teams in the league, if your starting quarterback goes down for a long period of time, you're screwed anyway. So why not save a little bit of money with Kyle Trask and go with someone that you already know and is aware of the system?
Yeah, they also like Michael Pratt too, right? And just even if you re-sign Kyle Trask, if Pratt kind of lights it up, you could see those guys flip on the depth chart where Pratt might be the number 2 after he gets this offseason in this offense. Because remember, he was signed right at the start of the season after the Packers let him go after the preseason. And he was basically the scout team quarterback. He was running the Bucs opponent's offense the entire season. And I got to know Michael Pratt. We'll have him on the podcast here this offseason. Good dude. And we liked him in the pre-draft process. He was one of our Bucs best bets, as a matter of fact, on day 2, or I should say day 3. And he said it's like the equivalent of jumping on a moving train, right? It's like, the train's already moving and you jump aboard and you're just kind of catching your breath because you did that. It's not like you onboard the train and then you have a time to get settled and relaxed into your seat or your cabin. And then it just takes off nice and slow, and then it goes right down the rails. So this will be the first offseason in Tampa Bay's offense. And Josh Grizzard and Todd Bowles and Jason Light will have the opportunity to take it, full advantage of the time this offseason and see how he progresses. And then, of course, training camp as well. As free agency has just started here, we're 15 minutes into it. Let's kind of set the table. And what I did is I dropped our Bucs free agency tracker in the chat. It's right at the top. And you want to bookmark that and keep visiting that page for latest updates. When there's rumors and stuff that we hear, we're going to put it in there. If there's any restructures, we're going to put it in there in that particular story. If there's any signings or if any Buccaneer players sign with other teams, we're going to put it in there. So that'll be a front page story that we'll keep updating and refreshing with every single Bucs move. So let's take a look at that and just kind of set the table, and then we'll kind of dive into today's topic, which is the Bucs offense being intact. And we have some super chats we'll get to in just a second here. But so basically, this is where things start for Tampa Bay. These are the re-signings so far: Chris Godwin, Ben Bredeson, Levante David, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, Kayvon Merriweather, CJ Brewer, and Daniel Griesiak. So some of these players like Greg Gaines, Merriweather, Brewer, Griesiak, they're not guaranteed roster spots. I think Greg Gaines probably will make the team. I'd love to see him at like defensive tackle 5 or 6 rather than defensive tackle 4, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting how it will play out because I was looking at it, and last year the Bucs kept 6 defensive tackles once training camp was done to start the regular season. And the roster changes all of the time based on injuries and things like that. So it's not like if the Bucs do that again, they're just going to keep 6 defensive tackles on the team the whole time. But I think the only thing we can go on is minicamp, OTAs, and then training camp coming up this summer. I don't know if the Bucs would necessarily keep 6 defensive tackles this time around because they also only kept 4 inside linebackers. And just knowing that Levante's 35 and Rossi Dennis has an injury history, I would be very surprised if the Bucs only kept 4 inside linebackers this year, depending on what they do in free agency and more specifically the draft. So defensive tackle might be that position where they take one guy off of that team, try to get him back on the practice squad. So Gaines as a 5th defensive tackle, I think means really good depth because Gaines, I'm not saying he's a world beater by any means, but he proved to be really, really important in games like when they defeated the Lions in week 2 because Vita Vea got injured and he ended up playing like 70% of the snaps, which is not typically the norm for him. And CJ Brewer, we talked about it. If the Bucs can find an upgrade for him, certainly go after it. And that's why we're kind of encouraging the Bucs to, draft a defensive tackle and at least push these guys like CJ Brewer. But Brewer did have a pretty solid training camp last season and did record the first 2 sacks of his career. It happened in the same game at home.
He was against the Falcons.
Atlanta. In the creamsicle game. So he does have 2 sacks, a couple of quarterback hits. Not the headline type of articles or headlines just in general that you're going to see from the Buccaneers. I don't know how I feel about all of these re-signings because the defense was such an issue last year. So what are they going to do? Bring everybody back? But they're cheap costs, and it's not going to hurt the team with the cap. So overall, it's all about competition.
Totally agree. Yeah, if they can find someone better than Merriweather or Brewer, and I think Greasyak's, he's a training camp guy that was on the practice squad. He knows the system, but he's maybe more just for training camp, depth and as a body in camp. So these are the Bucs free agency signings and departures so far. Riley Dixon, did I get that right? The punter?
Yes.
Riley Dixon? Okay, yeah. 2 years, $6 million. Hassan Reddick, outside linebacker, 1 year, $14 million. 2 players expected to sign with the Jaguars and the Browns, respectively. Robert Hainsey, the center, and then Joe Tryon Shawinka. Those are not surprises in terms of leaving. The Buccaneers were not going to be able to re-sign Robert Hainsey. He was going to get a starting gig and starting money out there. So that's that's not a surprise. Joe Tryon Shawinka was not going to be re-signed. That wasn't a surprise either. Here are the free agents remaining for the Buccaneers: Kyle Trask, Chase Edmonds, Sterling Shepard, Justin School, Royce Newman, Sua Opeta, Will Golston, Eric Banks, Shaq Barrett, KJ Britt, JJ Russell, Bryce Hall, Troy Hill, Mike Edwards, Tavierre Thomas, Ryan Neal. So the interesting names there, Matt, really, Will Golston, just because of his longevity. We saw him in the cruise. Dude still looks like he can play, right? He's going to be 33 this year. I know that's a sentimental guy for Jason Light, but that's also a guy that you're looking to replace with a younger, more active body. We talked about Trask already. Sterling Shepard is an interesting, name there. You want to upgrade there. But KJ Britt and JJ Russell, they did not tender JJ Russell a restricted free agent offer because it would have been over $3 million. But that doesn't mean that they might not want to re-sign him closer to the league minimum on a 1-year deal. That would probably be just over $1 million. But KJ Britt, sounds like the team is moving on from him.
It's the right move. Again, if all of these issues were happening on the defensive side, why are you going to bring every single person back? Unless you're just saying, well, it was because of injuries. Well, then these were the guys taking over for the injuries and not getting the job done.
Yep. We just have some breaking news. We got some breaking news here. Tavierre Thomas to the Vikings. So Tavierre Thomas, special teams player, will not be back with Tampa Bay. That's not a huge loss. He was basically a core special teamer, but Matt, we saw Kayvon Merriweather go into the game before Tavierre Thomas. This team also re-signed not just Mike Edwards, but Ryan Neal, and they saw action on defense ahead of Tavierre Thomas. So with Thomas, he was just a special teamer. Obviously, Todd Bowles didn't like what he saw from Thomas from a defensive standpoint, so it's fine to let him go.
I liked him on special teams, though. I mean, he blocked a field goal this season. I thought he was very valuable there, but it's not like you can't find other important special teams guy. But good for him. Goes to Minnesota, a team that had a great season last year, at least in a wins and loss perspective, until the postseason. So, probably gets a special teams opportunity there. And we see that a lot with players in the league. Like, if you are solid in a role on special teams, you could still have a pretty long career. You're not going to be making Mahomes money or, Jamar Chase money that he's about to make, but certainly have a long career in the NFL. So Bucs will have to find someone new in special teams to help stop those punts. But maybe Riley Dixon pinning everybody back deep will mitigate that a little bit.
Exactly. And then let's wrap it up with the salary cap room. Right now, according to Over the Cap, the Bucs have $6.3 million, but this does not include the deal for Hassan Reddick, which was a 1-year, $14 million deal, Matt, but probably going to have a void year. So probably will be like a phantom 2-year deal, 1 year, $14 million, but spread over 2 years to lower that cap value in 2025, which means that he's not going to count for $14 million this year. We'll have to see how that contract is actually structured once he signs it. And, it could be a thing where he gets $5 or $6 million this year, and then has a little bit of a dead cap hit next year, right? Same thing with Riley Dixon. Is it 3 and 3, or is it 1.5 and 4.5 next year? We'll see how Greenberg restructures this. But as of right now, before those deals, the Buccaneers $6.3 million, and Jordan Whitehead's release will create an additional $4.5 million in cap room. I think they're doing that right now. They're not picking up his option because it was really an option year. It was a 2-year deal, but this was a team option year. So this will free up $4.5 million. So you add that to call it 6.3. So you really have $10.8 million worth of cap space, which is plenty to get both Hassan Reddick and Riley Dixon, into that cap space right now. And then Mike Greenberg, he'll have the luxury of restructuring Tristan Wirfs, Anto Winfield Jr. He could do Vita Vea. He could do Baker Mayfield. So there are big contracts that the Buccaneers have where he can just kind of take some of their cap room this year and push it into future years to create as much cap room as he needs. I think Josh Capo said this team can really create $40-50 million worth of cap space if they really wanted to.
And that's the thing is, like we talked about on this show before, previous episodes, that the Bucs aren't just going to willy-nilly do all of these extensions until it's absolutely necessary. So when they want to sign other guys, that's when the creation of more cap space will come about. But if they don't need to extend some of these guys, regardless of who it is, they're not going to do so. But the important thing to get out of all of this is the fact that the Bucs are in a good financial spot where, yes, there's already players that have come off the board. So you're not looking at the humongous, gigantic contracts that you saw a couple of days ago. And a lot of these were re-signings in general across the board. But if there's anyone that the Bucs truly, truly want, they can still go after and bring them to Tampa Bay. So it shouldn't stop the Bucs from still being aggressive in free agency. I know it's been a lot of re-signings, and last year was the spring of re-signings. I guess they're doing a spring of re-signings part 2. But a lot of it's, again, been very important, whether it's Bredeson, whether it's Chris Godwin. So we'll see what's up next. Hopefully some fresh faces to go along with some of the familiar ones to really round out this team.
Yeah, and again, wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers, wait a day or so to see kind of what's left, because there's so many players out there. Only so many teams have so much cap space. Only so many teams have needs for certain positions. So you can get good players on really good value deals by being a little patient. And that's something that Jason Light is kind of been known for. I think fans want him to be more aggressive and more active in free agency. But at the same time, Matt, this is a team that has leveled up from 8 wins to 9 wins to 10 wins in each of those seasons, each of the last 3 seasons. And so if this team with these players got you 10 wins last year, and you're going to add at least 6 more players via the draft, right? So that's 6 newcomers right there. Plus you've got a new punter, thankfully, and you've got a new edge rusher already. And you've re-signed some of your key players that helped you get 10 wins. That's how you build a team, right? It's adding a couple of pieces. It's not revamping your entire roster, because it wasn't that bad last year anyways, right? We all said, what did we say before the start of the season last year? You, Bailey, Sly, Josh, myself, 10 wins.
And then 7.
Never in the history of Pewter Report doing our preseason predictions have all of our full-time staff members pick the same record before. We all picked 10-7 to start the season. We were all correct. That's exactly what we thought the Buccaneers were. That's exactly who they were. They proved to be. And none of us said Super Bowl. We all believe the Super Bowl window opens this year. And I think that's what you're going to see the team. Hassan Reddick is a win now type of move, right? This is going out and getting a big time pass rusher that has some veteran experience. He's got production, and we'll see if he still has it. But I think he's going to be revitalized here in Tampa. And I think Todd Bowles and Larry Foote are going to get the most out of him. So that's one piece there. And again, you can still add another pass rusher in the draft because it's just a 1-year veteran deal. And we'll see what this team continues to do and build their depth, because they've got a lot of starters, Matt. Really, they're looking for some depth pieces. They're looking for upgrades over guys like Bryce Hall and guys like Tavier Thomas. They're trying to level up their depth and get some guys that if they have to come in and pinch hit at cornerback or safety or offensive line, whatever, I think one of the guys that I want to see resign is Justin School. He showed just how important having quality depth is because, he had a rough start up there in Detroit against Aiden Hutchinson. But those next couple games when he was filling in, whether it was for Luke Edeke at right tackle or Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, Justin School proved his worth.
After the snafu of the Lions game, which the Bucs still won, so regardless of how bad it looked, they still won the game. And Liam Cohen took some blame for that too, saying that he didn't, put him necessarily in the right spot to go and help him out. Outside of that, there's not much more you could ask for from Justin School in that situation of coming in and starting for both offensive tackles at one point or another with how important those guys are to the team. And it's funny with Hassan Reddick, too, because right now, with the caveat of there's still free agency to go, there's still the draft next month, I still look at the Bucs right now as the ceiling being the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. Just because we can't pencil in Hassan Reddick to be the guy that he was 2 seasons ago. Now, it's funny. If this was last offseason, it was like the Bucs got Hassan Reddick. It'd be like, holy smokes, like this team is really all in. But we have to find out with Hassan Reddick, is he a shell of himself and the guy that he was with the Jets last season? Yeah. Or was that just an aberration and he really can still go and change games, get double-digit sacks, continue to knock the ball out? Because if they get that guy, then I will adjust my ceiling for the Buccaneers and say that they can make the Super Bowl. But until that is proven, I can't say that they're a Super Bowl contender just yet. Now, if they go out and crush the draft, which they have in several years, I reserve the right to change my mind once again. Yeah. As it stands right now while we're doing this show, I still think they're an NFC Championship game contender and not necessarily Super Bowl just yet.
I think that's fair, Matt. I really do. And you look at last year against some really quality teams, and they were missing Mike and Chris in some of those games, and maybe getting one or two of those guys in there makes a difference, right? But let's just go down the list real quick of the teams that the Buccaneers ended up playing last year that wound up making the playoffs, right? They beat Washington in week 1. They caught a brand new team at the right time, right? New coaching staff, a lot of new players, right? And they caught Washington in week 1, Jaden Daniels' first game, and caught them at the right time. They surprised the Lions in week 2, but still 2 quality wins. They lost to Denver. We thought it was a horrible loss at the time. Denver ended up being way better than anybody thought, right?
Funny how it works.
And they made the playoffs, but that was a brutal loss, 26-7. They got their asses kicked by the Broncos. Then they beat Philly, and for some reason, they just have Philly's number. They're going to play Philly again this year, which would be fun. It's the only playoff team that Tampa Bay is going to play at home this year, right? So you have Philly. But then this team got swept by the Falcons, right? And I think that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. Then this team got waxed by Baltimore, which is, a Final Four team every year. They just can't get past Kansas City or Buffalo for that matter. But they got destroyed by the Ravens. Then they ended up losing to Kansas City in a game that, if you have Mike or Chris, you might win that game because Kansas City just kind of got by every game last year on experience, and they didn't really overwhelm anybody, and they got their asses kicked in the Super Bowl too. Then this team lost to the 49ers. Close loss, but still. Tampa Bay had problems with clock management, game management, and close situation games, and games that were like 3-score or overtime games. They didn't really fare well until they finally beat Carolina in overtime. But then you look at that stretch, right, down, after the bye week. They beat the Giants handily. They swept the Panthers, including a big-time win at home. They ended up sweeping the Saints. They beat a Chargers team that was a playoff team, and that was kind of a surprise win, but then they lost to Dallas. So I think I'm with you, Matt. Until this Buccaneer team learns to not have those stub-your-toe games like the Cowboys, right, when you're making that playoff push, no business losing to Dallas in that game. No business getting swept by the Falcons. NFC South is tough, division games, I get it, but you got to split those. You can't get swept. And then show that you can beat teams that are really good quality teams. That loss to the 49ers game, the Bucs really had opportunities, and they should have won that game. And same thing with Kansas City. So until they can get some of those stub your toe games out of their system and
Yeah.
really get to 13 wins, 14 wins until they become that type of team. And maybe it happens this year. I'm with you. I don't know that this is a Super Bowl team in 2025, but it should be a team that gets a lot further in the playoffs.
Yeah, we don't know the order of the schedule just yet, but the November and specifically December schedule to me is going to really determine who this team is. Because if you look at last year, the Lions win was great. The Eagles win was great, but that was early in the season.
Yeah,
that was September, and then the Chargers win. No doubt about it, was a measuring stick game at the moment, but then you go and immediately lose to the Cowboys after. Could you imagine if that was kind of flip-flopped? And maybe they stubbed their toe against the Cowboys early in the season, but then in December, they beat the Lions and the Eagles, who at that
feel
time
better,
were
wouldn't you?
established
Yeah.
commodities. Yeah. And part of the knock of like how good is this Bucs team last season is because, with the exception of the Chargers, all the teams you just mentioned are all bad football teams. Like with the Panthers and with the Saints,
the Giants,
on and on and on. So you can't dictate your schedule. You have to play who's on it, and it doesn't matter what time of the year it is.
Right.
But I want to be able to find out who this Bucs team is in December, and we didn't really know that going into the playoffs with the Commanders. Now, they hung tight with the Commanders. It was a very close game. Yeah. I'm not saying if that game gets played 10 times, maybe the Bucs win the series 6-4 or whatever the case may be. But they don't do that. So it's any given Sunday, Monday, Saturday, Thursday, whenever they decide to play the games. And that's why I can't say that. I want them to go all in. The move with Hassan Reddick is a step in that right direction, but I can't be like, oh, the Bucs are a dark horse candidate to be the Super Bowl winner this year.
Yeah, not yet. Let's see how they finish free agency and of course the draft as well. We have some super chats to get to, so let's take care of some business here and get to them.
Yes, Bucs Basement starting it off. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Says, seeing how Bosa got the same money as Reddick, prefer Bosa. Interesting, because the deals are similar. I believe Bosa got
was it 16 million with him? 16
says 1 year, 12.6 million, and incentives it can go to 15.6 million. I think the big difference to me, and with everything with Hassan Reddick, it's okay. We know last year was not good, 1 sack, but Hassan Reddick. The one thing that he's given the Bucs that Bosa can't is durability.
Absolutely.
Like Hassan Reddick played 10 games, but he sat out a majority of the season.
7 games,
the last 2 years before that, he played all 17 games.
Yeah.
Played all 16, or played 16 games in 2021, played all 16 in really his whole career before that, too. And then the season moved to 17 games. He's a dude that, when available, he shows up and he plays. Joey Bosa, completely on the opposite end. He actually played in 14 games last season. That was big for him, but he was more of a rotational role. He only started 9 games. The year before that, played in 9 games. Played in 5 games in 2022, 16 in 2021, but 12 in 2020. So he's just a guy that has not, unfortunately, been able to stay healthy. He was a great edge rusher when he is healthy. He's a little bit older now. But as far as durability, that's what Tampa Bay wants. We all know the injuries they had last season. Hassan Reddick is a durable guy that can play a whole season. And if he doesn't work out,
agree.
Well, it's the same thing of they had JTS and JTS didn't work out.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think it was a lower back and a hip injury for Bosa. And as you get older, like that's not good. When you have like lower back injuries and all that, those can flare up. And I think that's the biggest thing with Bosa is good player when he's healthy, but I think he's in decline. And even as we saw with Carlton Davis, the injuries, the older you get, they kind of accumulate and they end up taking a toll on you. And you're just not the same player that you were before accumulating all those injuries. So I totally agree with you, Matt. I think that was spot on.
Mopar Buck, thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Says, where's the free agent cornerback? Samuel Jr. is still out there, and I'm hearing reports of Mike Hilton interest.
Yeah, Asante Samuel, I want to say he was receiving interest from I just had it pulled up and I don't see it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to Tampa Bay bringing in another starting caliber corner. And interestingly enough, we're talking about Jamel Dean's future on the show tomorrow.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is the cornerback money has just gotten out of hand. I mean, some of these deals are just ridiculous. You're talking, $14 million, $10 million a year for guys that are absolute backups in the league. So, I'm not sure. Mike Hilton is a really good slot corner, getting up there in age. I want to say he's 30, 31. That's not going to preclude the Buccaneers from addressing that. I just think it has to be the right fit from a salary cap standpoint. It's got to be the right fit from a player standpoint. They have to get the right player at the right price. Otherwise, I don't know that they're going to go all in there too on a starting caliber corner. I do think they want to look at upgrading their depth at the cornerback position, getting somebody better than Bryce Hall. I mean, and he broke his leg in week 1, so it's hard to say, he was a bust. He got hurt. But even we saw in OTAs, Bryce Hall was getting smoked down the field.
He got beat a couple of times. Yeah. I do like to leave it open for, hey, that's practice versus what's he going to do in a game. But nonetheless, even if Bryce Hall was back, I still think they would need to upgrade corner just to make sure you have a guy for the future. Yeah. Even if Jamel Dean is back too. I don't want to talk too much about him because he's the topic of tomorrow's show. But they need another corner that they can rely on, I think, for several seasons. Kind of the same way that they did with Zion, where Zion was drafted. He wasn't expected to be the top guy.
Right.
But then eventually he develops into that role, which is what we're seeing right before our very eyes with Zion McCollum after a solid year last season and looking to improve even more this season.
Okay. We will be talking about Jamel Dean. Is Jamel Dean in the Bucs 2025 plans? That's tomorrow's show. And will he get traded? Will he get cut? Will he stay? Because now his salary looks a little bit more palatable compared to what some of the other cornerbacks around the league are getting that may not be as talented as Jamel. Of course, the problem is Jamel is oft injured. He's a good dude. He's a great locker room guy, fits in well, knows the scheme. There are some pluses. And the great thing is Tampa Bay does not have to release him or trade him to necessarily create cap room right now. If the team wants to keep him, they can. If they do choose to part ways with them, they'll save about $8 million and some change on the salary cap. So we'll get into all that tomorrow with Jamel Dean. We've got a couple more shows for you, and not just the one with regards to the 4 o'clock show tomorrow, but we also have got another mock draft show that's going to be on tap tomorrow as well. And that's going to be at 8:30 with myself and Josh Capo. We're having our latest Bucs mock draft, and that is coming out at 5 o'clock tomorrow on pewterreport.com. So make sure you check that out. And then at 8:30, we will have our draft show, and that's going to be live, and that's going to be at 8:30. I can't find the graphic for it. But trust me, we're going to have it at 8:30. And then on Sunday, we're going to have a live Bucs mock draft show. That's going to have Josh Capo, Adam Slavon, and some guy named Trevor Sikkema. Works for Pro Football. Oh, yeah, former Pewter reporter. Trevor Sikkema is going to be joining the show. That's Sunday at 9 a.m. So this is going to be different from our mock draft. This is going to be a live Bucs mock draft. We'll probably use PFF's mock draft simulator and do it live on the show with the guy who is the draft guru over there at Pro Football Focus. We love him, Trevor Sikkema. So that's going to be 9 o'clock on Sunday. So make sure you get up for that and check that out on Sunday. There's not going to be a Pewter Insider on Friday this week. I'm going to be out of town. So is Matt. So we're going to shelve that until next week. But we will have that for you guys the week after for sure. And as always, we want to give a shout out to our Pewter Platinum members. We have a couple new ones too. Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor for Reals, Zach Jarvis, and Kevin Thomas. Thank you all so much for being Pewter Platinum members. And, we got these great, Matt and I got these great pen cases here. These are some Some nice luxury pens. It's a nice pen set we got from Rachel Gordon on the cruise. It's got our names on them. It's so cool. So that's big time shout out to you, Rachel. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Very cool. And it was great to meet Kevin and Rachel and Hizo and all of our Pewter Report fans on the cruise, on the Bucs cruise. That was awesome. And we'll have some pics and videos that we'll sprinkle in throughout the off season from that. What a fun time that was. And it's always fun to get new Pewter Report TV channel members. And we've got some brand new ones here. These are members who have either recently joined, rejoined, or leveled up. Talking about John V, Talking Trash, Drew, Joseph Bloom, Connor For Reals, Kevin Sampson, Ians Doctor, Timothy Henderson, Ryan H., Zach Jarvis, and Kevin Thomas. Thank you all so much for supporting our efforts here at Pewter Report TV. And if you want to become a Pewter Report TV channel member and support us here, you're welcome to do so. We'd love to have you. You get to use the cool emojis in the chats, and you get some great benefits as well. Find the Pewter Report TV channel membership that fits your budget, starting at $3.99 a month. And that's for the Pewter People membership. You get loyalty badges and custom emojis. $6.99 will get you early access to all of our videos. Our Pewter Report podcasts will go live, but other videos that we post, like the Pewter Pulse, Josh Capo's videos, Adam Slavon with his top 10 takeaways, and more, you get early access to those as well. The Pewter Premier and the Pewter Platinum members get exclusive Q&A videos with Matt and myself. That's the Pewter Insiders, typically Fridays at 1:30 for $9.99 a month and $24.99. And we have our Pewter Report swag going out to our Pewter Platinum members that have been with us for 4 months or longer. You will be getting those shortly. Those are a really cool swag bag with some Pewter Report merchandise coming out to you this month. And then what we're working on details for our first Pewter Platinum member meetup in Tampa. It's going to be, I think we're shooting for the first week of April, I believe. So stay tuned for that announcement.
Yeah, thanks everybody for their support. We really appreciate it. And thank you to Bucs Basement for this $5 super chat. It says, wish Light would realize it's okay to double the draft and free agency on positions. He could have doubled up at secondary and middle linebacker, but he didn't. Glaring holes. What I'll say about that is, first of all, Jason has doubled up on positions before. Like we talked about a ton how at corner, he'll draft two guys in the same draft and fill up the position that
Sean Murphy Bunting and Jamel Dean in the same draft in 2019.
As far as this year's draft, this year's free agency, just doing a lot of re-signings and then Hassan Reddick, it's important to remember that a lot of the teams that go out and go hog wild in free agency and are signing people left and right, that typically, sometimes it works, but typically is not always a recipe for long-term success.
Yeah.
I think the Titans are a really good example. Last year, they did a lot of different free agent deals. Now, they didn't have the quarterback with Will Levis.
Right.
But that's why they're picking number one overall once again. Teams that go too heavy in free agency tend to be not as successful as everybody imagines they are just because they have these new players. And that goes back to what we've talked about a lot with a change of scenery isn't always the right thing for every player because there's so many different factors in moving to a new place. Yep. I get that the Bucs struggled on defense and they're re-signing all these defensive guys, but let Jason Light do his thing because he's earned the right to, even if you disagree with some of the moves, to let it all play out before we can kind of say, well, this was wrong and this was wrong and whatever else the case may be.
I think you're right. And if you look at some of the key additions that he's made in the past, right before the start of the season, right? Sterling Shepard last year was signed during the mandatory minicamp, and he ended up helping this team out last year. It wasn't as glamorous of a move, wasn't as good of a move as everyone had expected. But he's added players like Kyle Rudolph. Again, wasn't necessarily the best fit, but he did that in training camp a couple years ago. Going way back, he picked up Carl Nassib off the waiver wire from Cleveland. in, I want to say, 2018. Nassib ended up becoming a semi-starter for Tampa Bay and had some really good seasons. Leonard Fournette was signed right before the start of the 2020 season and ended up being playoff Lenny and Super Bowl Lombardi Lenny, and was a starting running back for the Bucs the next season in 2021. So Jason Light will get players for this team all the way through up until the start of the season. And even as we saw with Antonio Brown or the trade for Steve McClendon from the Jets during the Super Bowl season, if the right player is available, the right price, he'll make the move. So free agency just started, folks, at 4:00 today officially, and it's not over yet. So a little bit of patience, and we'll see what happens. I'm all about criticizing Jason Light when it's warranted, but it's way too early to start that right now.
And just enjoy Chris Godwin being back. And enjoy Ben Bredeson continuing to be on the offensive line. And enjoy the fact that they're at least addressing outside linebacker with Hassan Reddick. And we'll enjoy this super chat of $5 from Hezo813. Thank you very much, Hezo, who says, SR, Matty Diamonds, maybe I missed this, but any word on Bryce Hall? Wonder if he'll get another shot here.
Yeah, probed some of my sources. Haven't heard anything back necessarily on Bryce Hall. Again, I wouldn't mind the re-signing if his checks out medically. I mean, he broke his leg last year. That was kind of a significant injury in week 1. But we'll see. We'll see how this progresses. Sua Opeta also tore his ACL in training camp last August. I'm not sure if he's medically cleared to play or not, or if he'll be part of the team's plans. But we'll see. This team will add some cornerbacks, and we'll see how they work out. Again, remember, Philadelphia last year, for as much credit as they get for Saquon Barkley and CJ Gardner-Johnson and some of the moves they made in free agency, Devin White was their big linebacker signing last year. 1 year, $7.5 million. They also signed some guy from New Orleans, Zach Bond, 1 year, $3.5 million. He was supposed to be a backup. It didn't work out for Devin White. He didn't even make the team in terms of being active for a couple weeks, and then they parted ways with him. He never suited up for the Eagles, right? It was Zach Bond who came in as the unheralded guy, 1 year prove-it deal, $3.5 million, and he ended up being an All-Pro, and they re-signed him for buku dollars for 3 years this offseason. So you never know. Nobody was raving and jumping up and down when Shaq Barrett was signed by the Buccaneers, back in 2019. So let's see how it all plays out. We'll see what type of gems Jason Light, Rob McCartney, Mike Beal, and the personnel guys can dig up this offseason.
Makes me wonder who's going to be this year's Zach Bond or this year's Shaq Barrett. Like, who's going to be that low-risk signing that ends up, being an absolute stud for their teams? We can only wait and see at this point. And we have a $1.99 super chat from Buckman850, who has a draft question. How would you guys feel if Will Johnson fell to 19?
I would love it. I think he's a damn good corner. The Michigan corner has got great size, 6'2", 194. Seems like very much a scheme fit. I think he's a damn good player. And I would, if he's the pick at number 19, makes a lot of sense. I think he's a starting caliber corner in this league. I'm not expecting him to be there, though. I think that he will be a top 15 pick just out of the reach of Tampa Bay. And we'll see. Will this team go with an edge rusher? Will they go with someone like Malachi Starks, who can play nickel or safety? I mean, it worked out well getting another Georgia Bulldog on this team from the secondary that has produced a lot of good NFL players to shoot their whole Bulldog defense, really. But yeah, Tyke Smith and Malachi Starks, you can make an argument that certainly would help out Tampa Bay secondary from a playmaking standpoint. And a guy like Starks, he can play nickel, free safety, strong safety.
Exactly. And
with Tyke and him almost being interchangeable, then you throw in a guy like Winfield who can kind of do all three as well. Now Todd Bowles can really play some chess in that secondary and move guys around and blitz this guy and drop that guy and have this guy in man coverage in the slot. So there's a lot of different directions Tampa Bay could go. Wide receiver would be a little bit of a stretch, I think, unless the right guy is there, just because you already have your top 3 guys set. You want your first rounder on the field. So getting an edge rusher, getting someone that can help in the secondary, if this team feels like Jalen Walker, could be a linebacker rather than an edge rusher. Same thing with Jihad Campbell. Then maybe one of those guys factors into the linebacker role in the first round. But yeah, cornerback certainly as well. It just has to be the right guy there. I almost see, given Jason Light's track record, drafting cornerbacks on day 2 rather than in the first round. He's only drafted 1. It was Vernon Hargreaves.
The chemistry with Tyke Smith and Malachi Starks would be exceptional. And Starks even said at the Combine that Tyke is one of the smartest players that he's ever seen and ever, was a teammate with. So they already know each other pretty well. Starks got credit as well for getting the better of Brock Bowers when they were teammates at Georgia in practice. And the versatility of playing safety and also in the slot certainly would be of interest to the Bucs.
Yes, just like the financial advice that you're going to get from Immuni Financial will be of interest to you.
At Amuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Amuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Do what I did. Give the folks at Immuni Financial a call and meet with Mark, meet with David, meet with anybody on their staff, and they're going to help you navigate these kind of uncertain times that we're living in, financially speaking. Inflation is dropping, which is great, and these guys are, I think, the best in the business when it comes to helping you out, whether it is their advisory services, whether it's their legacy planning, their brokerage services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts for the kids. Lord knows I got a couple kids in college. That's expensive, as well as insurance. So with 40 plus years of experience, let Immuni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Not just in the state of Florida, they can help you all across the entire country. So please help support our Peter Report sponsors. Give Immuni Financial a call at 1-800-868-6864. That's 1-800-868-6864, or visit immuni.com. Everybody talks about getting a second opinion when it comes to your medical health. Well, when it comes to your financial health, that's important too. Their services are free in terms of their consultations. Give Immuni Financial a call, and I think you're going to be pleased with the results that you get.
Yeah, please check them out. And just kind of to put a bow on everything today, again, we spoke to Ben Bredeson earlier in the day, and really the common theme, and he said it himself because he kept bringing it up, continuity. I think it's so important with Ben Bredeson. Before he was playing for the Bucs, he was drafted by the Ravens, got injured his first year, and then was traded to the Giants. Yeah. He played all over with the Giants. He played at left guard, he played at center, he played at right guard. He prides himself on his versatility. But to have that security of just playing left guard right now, and maybe he'll end up playing center and if something happens to Graham Barton, but we don't want that to happen. But to stay with the team where he gets to work next to Barton specifically, gets to work next to Tristan Wirfs. I mean, he said it was a dream come true, like having this security with the contract and being on a winning team. If you go from offensive line to wide receiver to running back, and he spoke about gelling together with even learning the way that Bucky Irving cuts and Rachaad White cuts.
That's right.
I'm so excited for this offense next season just to see what they can look like.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is when you look at what Chris Godwin said about Josh Grizzard, I thought that was really interesting too, right? He says that they have to tell him to leave the building. Go home, Josh, because he's putting in so much time. He doesn't really have an ego, and he's more quiet and reserved, whereas Liam was a little bit more, flamboyant. And, I'm not knocking Liam. I think Liam was great for Tampa Bay and great for getting the Buccaneers offense going. But certainly it's a little bit of a different vibe with Josh Grizzard. And I think he's kind of the guy that will put his nose down, get to work, And even though he is a first-year play caller, I get the sense that he's going to be somewhere in between what Dave Canales was as a rookie play caller and what Liam Cohen was as a rookie NFL play caller, right? David never called plays before at any level. Liam had done so for 2 years at Kentucky. We saw Liam in this offense click on all cylinders right out of the gate, right? 37 points in that opener. Baker Mayfield, 4 touchdowns. You know, they ran for well over 100 yards with Bucky Irving and Rachaad White in that tandem against the Commanders in week 1. I just get the feeling that Josh is going to hit the ground running too. Maybe not like Liam, but I think better than Dave. What do you think, Matt?
Oh, I totally agree from the fact that he's going to have much more of an advantage having been with this team, running an offensive system that ultimately will be his offensive system, but one that the players already know. They understand who Josh Grizzard is, what he's about. There's not that getting to know you type of session that needs to go on. He knows how Mike operates. He understands what he needs to call for Baker Mayfield. And because everybody's back, yes, they're still going to be gelling. They're still going to absolutely be kind of building from the ground up once again. But it's not like he has to study. He will with like rookies and any new free agent signings, but he doesn't have to study as much what makes this guy work. How does this guy get his best football in this formation or this type of running play or this type of passing play? Because he knows all of those answers because he saw it time and time and time again last season. And he was already helping so much with the plays on third down. Now he's just got to figure out first and second down. And
that's right.
He's out first and second down. Maybe he doesn't even have to worry about third down because they're already down the field and not getting into those third down situations.
Yep, exactly. Just wanted to let you all know Briar Greaves Insurance, protecting your assets, starts with a company you can count on, whether it's homeowners, auto, flood, boat, or business, working with an independent agency based here in Tampa that you can trust. You know, when I need information or have a question for Briar Greaves, I call up my particular Briar Greaves agent, who's John Greaves, son of Briar, and always get him on the phone, always get a call back. I'm not calling some 1-800 number and getting put on hold for 10 or 15 minutes, then talking to somebody I don't know. There is value in having a relationship with somebody who's looking out for you, someone who will shop for the best rates and provide you with the answer at a moment's notice, right? And I think that's the important thing is if you want the best rate, why don't you have somebody else do all the legwork for you? That's what Briar Greaves will do for you at no charge. So give Briar Greaves Insurance a call at 813-876-4166 or visit them on the web at briargreavesinsurance.com. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, insurance.com. Matt, we got a couple of more shows to get to as we round out the first week of free agency here. And again, your reminder, please check out our Bucs free agency tracker on pewterreport.com. That has all of the updated information, I think, including the Tavierre Thomas signing with the Vikings. That'll be updated all night. Tomorrow, bookmark it, check it often, and we'll have the latest salary cap information for you as well. We have a show tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Jamel Dean. Is he in the Bucs' plans for 2025? Then tomorrow night at 8:30, Bucs bolster their defense. Mock draft show number 3. What cornerbacks will the Bucs draft? Will they draft the safety? Which outside linebacker will they draft? Well, probably Boston College's Donovan Izaraku, right? No surprise. And then what linebacker will they draft? So you're going to like this mock draft. We've already revealed it to a couple people. It's gotten rave reviews. The website will have it at 5 o'clock. Check that out at pewterreport.com at 5 o'clock. Then join Josh Capo and myself for an hour-long podcast tomorrow night to talk about it, to answer your questions and get your feedback on it. That's at 8:30 here on Pewter Report TV. And again, no Pewter Insider Show on Friday as Matt and I are out of town, but still 2 more great shows for you all tomorrow.
And then a live draft show on Sunday. So that'll do
right.
for us on today's show. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video. That's it for today. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. and then later on at 8:30 for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.